5, 4.
Good afternoon and welcome to our daily COVID-19 update for the town of Plymouth. This is update number 39 coming to you live at noon on Wednesday, May 6th, 2020. I'm Steve Triffletti, your Plymouth Town Moderator, and we're here each day, Monday through Friday at noon for this update. I'm joined each day by Kenneth Tavares and Matt Muratore, and today our guests include Dr. Mark Wilson, Laurence Pizer, Michael Jackman, Heather Cozby, and Amy Naples. And we're going to begin with the chair of the Plymouth Board of Selectmen, Kenneth Tavares. Welcome, Ken.
Good afternoon, everyone. Last night, the Board of Selectmen met. We had an update from our town clerk. He's with us this afternoon for this update, so we're very fortunate to have Larry, and I'll leave the details to him. I would like to show our appreciation to Larry and his staff. They've been working under some horrible conditions, trying to get ready for the upcoming elections, and we do appreciate the work that he and the staff are doing. Thanks, Larry. Also, the board spent quite a bit of time talking about the fiscal year 20 and 21 budgets. There are changes that are anticipated. The board is asking questions and has sent everyone back to get some answers for next week. We also spent quite a bit of time looking at the annual and special town meeting articles that may be recommended to change before we meet in the special and annual town meetings. Again, a number of questions were asked. More information, detailed information is being requested, and this will be back on our docket again next week. Thank you.
Thank you, Kenneth Tavares, Chair, Plymouth Board of Selectmen. And we're now going to go to Dr. Mark Wilson. He is the active professor emeritus, University of Michigan School of Public Health, Department of Epidemiology. Mark.
Thanks very much, Steve. And I thought I'd start just very quickly reminding everyone of the new law, the new order that Governor Baker issued regarding mask use. At all times, you should be wearing a mask inside grocery stores, pharmacies, and other retail stores. But the law also includes mask use, required facial covering when you're using any services of a taxi, a car, or ride sharing, or any means of public transportation. And also, if you're out of doors, well, this is both indoors or out of doors, but especially when you're out of doors in public places where you cannot social distance at least 6 feet, you must be wearing a mask then. So I think most of us all agree that this is a very important means of reducing transmission, and we should all abide by it. I thought I'd start with a few questions that have been asked that might be of interest to the viewers right now. First question is, can I explain what is meant by herd immunity and why this is so important? This term refers to the proportion of people in a population who are immune. And they can become immune from either past infection or from vaccination. Of course, with COVID, we don't yet have a vaccine. So people who are previously infected may be protected, may be immune. And as the proportion of immune people rises in a population, the number of new cases will eventually start decreasing. Basically, you can think of this as the virus running out of new people to infect. We're no longer able to be infected if we have immunity. And when this is at a population level, the herd immunity threshold is something we think about. In other words, it's the threshold proportion of people beyond which the virus just simply can't continue to be transmitted to new cases. And you've probably heard about this magic number of 1, above 1 or below 1. If the herd immunity threshold is above 1, then transmission can continue. If it's below 1, you'll see declining new cases, and eventually it will disappear. What is the number that we need to come to in order for this coronavirus transmission to diminish and eventually stop. It's really difficult to say, but it's in the range of perhaps 50 to 80% of the population. So it's really nothing we should be thinking about just yet, simply because we're maybe at 1 or 2 or at most 5% of the population on average. But this raises another interesting question because, in fact, we're not all randomly mixing. And there are some areas that have much higher herd immunity than other areas. That is, much higher proportion of the population that's been infected and is no longer, we presume, able to be infected again. And so in some of those areas, it actually may be beginning to impact on the number of new cases. This is something that is being studied right now in those hard-hit areas where a larger number of people have been infected and probably have immunity. How long that immunity will last, we don't know, but it's something that will be studied in the future. Related to this then is the question of vaccination. There's been a lot of discussion about this. And basically the question that was asked, why is it going to take so long to develop an effective vaccine? And why is it so difficult? First of all, there are many different approaches to candidate vaccines, and some are actually quite new. The old ones involved actually killing the virus and using that as a source of vaccination. Now there are genetically modified strains and sometimes even only parts of viruses that are used to vaccinate people. Once a candidate vaccine is developed, then there's a long series of tests in different phases. And right now for the coronavirus, a few of the candidate vaccines are being tested in the very early preclinical stages, but most of them are even just now being developed. And there are many throughout the world. Once a vaccine candidate has been developed, clinical trial phases are phase 1, which involves small trials to assess whether or not the vaccine is safe in humans and whether or not it produces an immune response in humans. Phase 2 trials essentially evaluate the efficacy of the vaccine against artificial infection. So people can take the vaccine voluntarily or a placebo and then are infected, in this case probably by nasal or oral inoculation, and clinical disease may or may not develop. So it's a phase 2 small group of people who are clinically infected after being vaccinated. Phase 3 then expands this to a much larger number of people, many hundreds of subjects, and this could be across a large area. And if the vaccine remains safe and efficacious over this defined period of time, then it's possible for the manufacturer to essentially ask for regulatory licensing and then be able to market it. These phases are being compressed enormously in the current epoch where we're faced with this pandemic. And yet at the same time, I'm sure that no regulatory agencies are willing to sacrifice human well-being at the risk of pushing this forward too rapidly. So even though there's an enormous effort being put forth and rapid development occurring, I think we can all rely on these processes to take place in a way that will keep people safe. And in the long-term efficacy of these vaccines, there are reviews that take place regularly that look for rare adverse effects and so forth, but we're nowhere near that. So this is basically the reason why it takes so long to develop a vaccine. And as I think many have heard, we are on a record pace for developing vaccines, and there may be many of them, for this coronavirus. Related to this, very briefly, let me just briefly mention the principle of strain specificity. In other words, there are very often different strains of the same general microbe or pathogen that can evolve. And recently there was a report of a coronavirus strain that we in the Northeast are sharing that is apparently somewhat different than the original strain isolated in China. And what is hypothesized is that this new strain in the US, which is only slightly different, evolved through mutations that were then selected for probably in Europe. And the new strain is basically as virulent as the original strain from Wuhan, but it's more easily transmitted. So this is an interesting observation that, again, you may have heard about. The key here is, even though it's more easily transmitted, it's not more virulent. It will not cause more disease or more severe disease, as far as is known right now. It may influence what vaccine developments occur and whether or not the protein on these viruses that is evolved, that is mutated, will have to be taken into consideration in developing the vaccine. But it's an interesting observation that I think many of you have heard about. It's nothing to worry about. It's all part and parcel of the coevolution of this new virus with the human species. So let me stop there, and I'd be happy to answer questions later on as the program develops.
Thank you, Dr. Mark Wilson. He's the active professor emeritus at University of Michigan School of Public Health, Department of Epidemiology. We're very fortunate to have a local epidemiologist in Plymouth volunteering his time as we seek to understand the evolving facts and issues that were presented as we respond each day and each week to the coronavirus. So again, thank you, Dr. Wilson. And at this time, I want to remind viewers that each day we date stamp the presentation, and it is in the upper right-hand corner. It's coming to you live on May 6th. You can also email questions to us to plymouthinfo@pactv.org. And we're now joined by Laurence Pizer. He is the town clerk. And Mr. Pizer, you're also responding to changes as the coronavirus continues with both your absentee ballots and early ballots. What do you have for us today?
Well, first of all, I appreciate Chairman Tavares' comment about my staff. They have been working under difficult situations and working very hard to fill the orders that we have. Not only do we have half of the staff allowed in the office at the time, but the staff members who are home are working from home using home computers and telephones. It's quite impressive. As far as the election is concerned, last night the Board of Selectmen voted to send a letter to Senator Spilka, who is the president of the Senate, strongly requesting that the election of May 19th be postponed until a safer time to hold an election. We have no idea when we'll hear from Senator Spilka. We have no idea what the result will be, and therefore it's necessary for us to proceed as though the election will be held on May 19th itself. Cannot emphasize too strongly that the safest way for voters to participate, and we do believe that voters should participate, is to do it by mail. What they need to do is they need to transmit a request to us. It can be done by mail if they want, Town Clerk, 26 Court Street, or even more quickly, they can do it by email. Write a request, put your name on it, put your address on it, say I'd like a ballot for the May 19th election, and sign it. And then email it to R. Reardon, that's RREARDON, at townhall.plymouth.ma.us. You can also find that information on the town's website. We are fulfilling orders as absolutely as quickly as we can. And in fact, on last Friday, when we left the office, we had fulfilled all the orders that had arrived. The number that came in over the weekend was just amazing. Scary for us, but pleasing for the election. So we are working on them. I have no problem if people want to email and ask when they can expect their ballot. We should be able to to do that. As far as returning the ballot is concerned, the easiest way to do that is by mail.
Yep.
If you feel uncomfortable doing that, there is a deposit box on the upper level of Town Hall, just to the left of the entrance doors. And you would have to actually fold your ballot in order to get it in there, but that's certainly a good way of doing it. As far as people who are planning to vote in person, I hope there aren't too many of you. I hope most of you will be voting by mail. We're going to ask you to understand the difficulties that we're working under. We are going to have sneeze guards in front of our personnel. We are going to have gloves. We're going to have masks and all the protections that we can possibly give. But in addition to that, we are going to limit the number of people in the polling location to 6 at a time, in the spirit of trying to keep groups under 10. Clearly, that could cause people to have to stand outside, and we hope they'll socially distance if they do. But the number of people voting by mail will strongly lower the number of people who are voting in person. If you are going to the polls, we ask that you bring your own mask. We also ask, please bring your own pen. If someone uses one of our pens, it's going to be necessary for a custodian to clean the pen as the day goes on. And finally, I think that people have been very patient with us. We have I think, good reputation for filling orders for the other things that the clerk's office does. We completed our backlog about a week and a half ago, and we have a new backlog. So if you've ordered a birth, death, or marriage certificate online, thank you for your patience. We will get to it, but it takes time. Thank you.
Thank you. That's Town Clerk Laurence Pizer. He will join the other participants today to answer your questions. Send them to PlymouthInfo@pactv.org. And at this time, we welcome back Michael Jackman. He is on staff with Congressman Bill Keating's office. Welcome, Mike.
Thanks, Steve, and it's great to be back here again with you and PAC TV. Appreciate the opportunity. It's great to see my regular Wednesday crew, Heather and Amy, and of course, Ken and Matt. And I also want to thank Dr. Wilson, not only for sharing your insights today, but came in on a Zoom meeting for the South Shore Community Partisan Prevention, which I chair, based here in Plymouth, and shared his insights. And then we had a great feedback on your presentation, Dr. Wilson. And of course, I want to thank Larry, not only and his staff, not only for the work that you're doing with the upcoming election and all the other stuff you do, but of course for handling all the qualifying signatures for the upcoming September election, which our office has an interest in. Obviously, I'll just leave it there. And it's really amazing to hear, Larry, your presentation and all the things you take for granted about voting and just about accessing town services and the things we have to be mindful of now during this particular time. And it's unfortunate, but it is the way it is. And working together, we will get through this. Just a couple of updates I wanted to share with folks. We've been talking a lot. I know Heather has mentioned quite a bit the economic impact payment, the $1,200 check or payment that folks are getting, should have gotten, will be getting over the next few weeks and months. We're getting a new guidance from the IRS every day on this, based on questions and feedback from taxpayers, from congressional offices, from elected officials all across the country. The latest update we got was about stimulus payments that went to deceased persons. This is, the Social Security system and the IRS system don't always communicate well together, and Social Security might know that you're deceased, but that information doesn't get to the rest of the Treasury or to the IRS to update their records so that they have issued quite a few checks and payments to people who are deceased. There was a lack of clarity about this in the first few weeks of the program. I think the head of the Taxpayer Advocate Service might have said that people should just keep that money, but now IRS is being very clear that they want that money back. If you got a check, you can just void the check and send it back to the IRS. If you got a direct deposit, or if you got a check and you already cashed it, you need to write a check to the U.S. Treasury and send it back to the IRS. If you're in this situation, please do call our office, 508-746-9000. We can give you this information. We can give you the address in Andover where you need to send that check, send that payment back. Haven't heard too many calls about this, so hopeful that not too many Plymouth folks have been affected by this. But if you have, please do call our office. Again, it's 508-746-9000. And we'll give you the information you need to get that money back to the government. A few other things I wanted to mention. The FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Administration, obviously we are in a major disaster declaration here in Massachusetts, and that means a few different things for folks, especially in regards to FEMA and the Mass Emergency Management Agency, MEMA. One of the things that was approved as part of that declaration was crisis counseling, and the state was approved. The state applied for it and was approved for a certain amount to work with the vendor to provide that service here in Massachusetts. I know you've had a lot of great resources on this show. There are a lot of great resources, hotlines for people who need help dealing with this crisis. The crisis counseling program helps people and communities to recover from the effects of a natural disaster through short-term interventions that promote emotional support, crisis counseling, and connection to familial and community support systems. So the state has received that funding and has worked with a vendor and will, I think, very soon be advertising who the vendor is and how people can access that crisis counseling. The other part of the FEMA disaster declaration is public assistance. And this will be something that the town is very familiar with when we have hurricanes or blizzards and a disaster is declared. After the fact, the town can count up all its costs that associated with that storm and can ask for reimbursement for some part of those funds from FEMA. That is the case now. We had a disaster declaration for costs going back to January 20th and ongoing. So there's no end date to that disaster declaration at this time. And that applies not only to towns, municipalities, cities, state agencies, but also to certain nonprofit organizations. So again, if you have questions about that, there's actually an applicant briefing today for nonprofit organizations. I'm going to be on that to try to get some more information, but please do give our office a call and we'll try to get that information out to you. And the last thing I just want to mention, it's, every week I come on and one of the things we like to do in normal times in the congressional office is to do outreach and to work with our communities on all the different programs. But that's obviously not possible at this time. One of the functions of the member of Congress is to nominate candidates to the federal service academies, West Point, the Naval Academy, the Air Force Academy, and the Merchant Marine Academy. And we do that every year for high school students, juniors who are going into their senior year. And every year we have a spring fair, usually down at Mass Maritime, where students and their families can come and ask questions about the different academies, what cadet life is like, what the application and interview process is like. Obviously, we're not able to do that in person this year, but we are going to be doing a Zoom meeting, a virtual Spring Academy night on May 21st at 6 p.m. Again, if you want information about that, if you're interested as a high school junior, or even if you have an interest in the academy as a younger person, please feel free to get in touch with our office and find out more about that and how you can register for the online virtual Spring Academy night, which will be May 21st. Again, the best way to reach us is at 508-746-9000. Thank you, Steve.
Thank you. That's Michael Jackman. He is on staff at Congressman Bill Keating's office. And at this time, we welcome back on a Wednesday, Heather Cozby, Plymouth CPA. Welcome, Heather.
Hi, Steve. Hi, everybody. Good to see everybody again. This is probably the most social activity I get each week, so I'm very excited about that. I want to talk just a little bit. I started to hint about it last week about the PPP loans and the status of the debt forgiveness. And there's been a couple of developments this week that I think are going to be really key. I don't have a lot to say about the individuals. All of that is working through. There are always going to be hiccups, as Michael already talked about with the deceased taxpayers, but that'll be getting worked through, and there's a lot of information about that. I'm going to start with the PPP loans, and if everybody recalls all the press conferences talking about how the loan will be forgiven and the forgiveness is not taxable income. This is a huge statement that was made and represented. So what's happened this last week is that last Thursday, I think it was Thursday, but the IRS issued notice 2020-32. And the IRS says, yes, it's the forgiveness is not income. Normally, debt forgiveness you pick up as income. But they've gotten cute and they've said, but instead, any deduction you paid, so you paid your payroll expenses, we're not going to make those deductible. So to people who are not accountants, that might be like, well, okay, I don't understand. To accountants, it makes our heads explode because it's exactly the same as making the debt proceeds taxable. If you're not allowed to deduct the expenses you paid, then they've made that income to you. So what the American Institute for CPA, AICPA, has done is they've worked with Congress. They've put together a bill, and the bill is called the Small Business Expenses Protection Act of 2020. That bill is right now it's been approved by the Senate, and it is in a Senate Finance Committee. And I may have had that wrong. I'm not a legislator, but Michael can help with that. So this bill, any business who has received PPP funds, this is the bill that you need to track. You need to make sure that you provide your support to your congressman. Michael, I'm telling you my support for that right now. This is extremely important because this whole PPP process was meant to provide capital to businesses so that they could employ their employees. It was never meant to affect their bottom line, what they pay their income taxes on. So that is in process. I believe that the IRS is doing what they can with the laws they have in front of them. But the intent and honestly, if Mr. Trump heard this, I'm sure he would be going, no, we're not going to do that. So, that you need to follow that law. And you can actually, there's certain websites that you can track laws while they're going through the Senate, the whole process. So very important that you watch the results of that law. If that does not happen and the IRS's position is maintained, you need to immediately start planning for what that means for you on a tax basis. So that's a big issue. The second issue, which has been brought up again by the AICPA to Congress, that I don't think is included in that bill, is the whole timing of you have 8 weeks to get your loan proceeds, and then you're supposed to have 8 weeks to incur these expenses in order for them to qualify for debt forgiveness. The problem is, obviously, if you're in a state where your business is not allowed to be open and you've gotten your funds in anticipation of it opening, how are you going to qualify for debt forgiveness? Why should you be singled out to not have it forgiven? Because by law, you couldn't operate. So that issue is also being discussed in the background, that hopefully they'll have a resolution and they would adjust the language. One of the proposed languages is 8 weeks from the day your stay-at-home order is lifted, or that 8 weeks from the day that you would be allowed to operate. So again, that's something that you may want to, you got to advocate for yourself as a small business. These are the issues and that you need to be hoping go through in order to make this loan be the most valuable for you. So that's the kind of the PPP update. The other area I wanted to focus on, because the SBA, last week I brought up, I think it was last week, the frequently asked question document that's on SBA.gov's website. that was updated again yesterday. And now it's up to like 40 or 41 things that are there. But on that, I wanted to bring attention to the question number 40, which is something that I started to talk about last week as well. This goes into play with the idea that you're a business, you've gotten your PPP funds, and you go to hire back your employee because you can operate, you're able to operate, and you want to hire them back, and your employee refuses. So part of the debt forgiveness calculation is you have to rehire. You have to get your staffing levels up to where they were. And so the SBA has answered the question, if my employee refuses, are you basically going to count that against me in my debt forgiveness calculation? And SBA has responded that in that specific instance, we will not, that will not be counted against you. And in that item, number 40, I'm just going to grab it. You need to make a written offer to the employee. So there's a process that you would need to follow if you anticipate this to be an issue for you. So you need to have a good faith written offer of rehire, and the employee's rejection to that offer must be documented. And so if you're trying to hire people and they don't come back, and that affects your ability to pay this payroll out in 8 weeks, you need to be doing these steps in order to protect yourself in the debt forgiveness calculation. So that's a specific issue. Again, go find the frequently asked questions on SBA.gov in the PPP loan area, and just keep looking at those each week because they change each week. So the last issue that I wanted to highlight is, employees are obviously worried. They're being asked to come back to work. They might have an underlying health issue. They might have problems. These are all legal questions, which I'm not even going to attempt. But at the end of the day, I want to remind you that CDC has issued guidelines for businesses and how to operate during the coronavirus, involving cleaning and things like that. So you should absolutely refer those types of questions to a business attorney, but you can start by looking at the guidelines on how you're supposed to be conducting business so that you're providing a healthy environment for your employees. And that's it for me right now. So.
And thank you. That's Heather Cozby. Heather is a Plymouth CPA. She joins us each Wednesday. And you can send her your questions to plymouthinfo@pactv.org. We're now going to go for our daily business update with Amy Naples. She's the Executive Director, Plymouth Area Chamber of Commerce. Welcome, Amy.
Hi, Steve. Great to see you. Great to see my fellow Wednesday panelists as well. Awesome update from Heather. I always learn so much that I can communicate to our members, so thank you for that. On Monday's show, I had discussed the Plymouth Recovery Task Force, which we had formed with our partners from the town of Plymouth, See Plymouth, and the Plymouth Regional Economic Development Foundation, as well as various industries. Collectively, that group represents the majority of the Plymouth businesses as well as its workforce. The task force will be charged with identifying challenges facing our local businesses and citizens and how we can overcome those barriers. We want to aid our business community in pushing to get out of survival mode and into thriving mode. We met yesterday afternoon and created our goals, objectives, and the framework, and are confident that we are working together and we will collectively have a strong plan for recovery efforts. I also want to remind our business community that the Chamber honors small businesses every day. According to the SBA, small businesses created close to 31 million new jobs, employed about 60 million Americans, and small businesses make up 44% of our total U.S. economic activity. These stats reveal who the true heartbeat of our economy is, our small businesses. This week was scheduled to be the National Small Business Week, although recent events compelled the SBA to postpone their annual slate of programming and awards, but that's not stopping us from honoring the positive contributions of small businesses in our community. Whether you built a neighborhood restaurant, made an honorable jump to starting your own company, or turn your passion into a full-fledged business, we're celebrating you every day, especially as we rise above our challenges. And that is why the Plymouth One Fund is so important to keep our businesses alive and well. So please join us this Saturday night for Coachella on PAC TV's channel 13, which is Comcast, and channel 43 Verizon. as well as streaming on Facebook and YouTube. A very special thank you to fellow panelist Heather Cozby of Cozby and Company CPAs and Mayflower Brewing for their generous support in being our presenting sponsor. You'll hear why the Plymouth One Fund is so important, heartfelt stories from our local business owner, and 9 amazing local musicians performing from their home to yours. So grab your takeout, pick up your special Coachella beer from Mayflower Brewing, and join us. And that is our business update for today.
Thank you. Amy Naples, Executive Director for the Plymouth Area Chamber of Commerce. Each day we welcome Plymouth Representative Matthew Muratore. Matt, welcome.
Hey, good afternoon, Steve. How are you today? Good afternoon to all the panelists. Again, I love every day we do this show, but I really enjoy Wednesdays because it helps me do less work that I have to prepare for this. So I appreciate all the panelists that are on today with some terrific information. First of all, it's Happy Nurses Day, so happy nurses to all the nurses out there. And just a reminder, Mother's Day is Monday and the flower shops are open, not to foot traffic, but you can call your local florist if you want to get deliveries done for florists. And also the restaurants, a lot of them are doing Mother's Day specials, but you have to get your orders in by early Friday usually. So be sure that you do that as well. So real quick, I'm gonna look at some of the numbers. The trending numbers still look pretty good. Yesterday we had an increase of 9,081 tests. So our total tests that we've done to date is 333,349, which is 4.8% of the population. When we looked at March 5th of 2020, just 2 months ago, only 25 people were tested. So you can see the magnitude of the testing that's been done in 60 days. With those that have been confirmed with coronavirus, that increased by 1,184 from the day before to a total of 70,271, which is 21% of those that have been tested positive. Of those from yesterday, it was down. It was 13% of those tested, so that number is good. I mentioned yesterday, the end of March, we were testing people, and 30% of the folks that were being tested were tested positive. So to have it at 13%, that number is good. And the average age is still running just slightly under 7 years old for people that are contracting the virus. Unfortunately, the death toll continues to rise. We had an increase of another 122 from the day before to 4,212. So 6% of those that have contracted the virus have unfortunately passed away from this. The same average age of 82 years old. 98.4% of those folks that have passed away have had underlying health conditions. With regard to the long-term care facilities, which are nursing homes, assisted livings, and rest homes, 60% of all the deaths have come from these facilities, 2,520. And when you look at the death toll by age category, and I want to bring this up only to emphasize the fact, the importance of wearing masks, as Dr. Wilson has talked about. With regard to anyone under the age of 19, there have been no deaths whatsoever. Between the ages of 20 and 29, 3 deaths. Between the ages of 30 and 39, 11 deaths. Between the ages of 40 and 49, 37 deaths. Between the ages of 50 and 59, 148 deaths. Now here's where it gets even more dicier. Between the ages of 60 and 69 is 424 deaths. That's triple the amount from the ages of 50 to 59. And then when you look at 70 to 79, it doubles. It's 950 deaths. And if you're over 80 years old, then you have there are 2,639 folks that have passed away. So anywhere between the ages of 60 and higher, of the 4,212 deaths, 4,013 are over the age of 60. So this is why wearing masks to prevent you from getting the disease, contracting the disease, but also anybody over the age of 60. These are the folks that are being affected by this. And you may not know you have the virus, so you have to be careful with that. So I did want to bring that up, Steve. With regard to hospitalizations, we're still running at 5%. On April 28th, we had 3,892 folks in the hospital in the Commonwealth. Today, we have 3,542. So that number has dropped. Of those 3,542, 914 are in ICUs. So those numbers are looking good. The bed capacity, the open beds, hospital beds in the Commonwealth is still at 53%. In Southeast Mass, it's a little bit lower. It's at 48%, but still a lot of bed capacity in hospitals, which is good. The highest one-day new hospitalizations was 931 on April 13th. So one day we had 931 folks admitted to hospitals because of the coronavirus. Yesterday we had 3 people that are admitted throughout the Commonwealth. So as you can see, again, the numbers are going in the right direction. BID Plymouth has 64 patients who have the coronavirus, with 4 of those being in the ICU. The long-term care facilities today have tested 31,924 folks in 563 facilities. And there are confirmed cases in long-term care facilities of 14,383 cases, with at least 1 case in 330 facilities. So the numbers in long-term care and correlates with what we're seeing with seniors that are really affected by this disease. Again, as Dr. Wilson and others have said, wearing the mask order is in place right now. The advisory board, as I talked about yesterday, just a reminder that they're meeting daily. They've met with so many different industry groups that affect more than almost 2 million people that are out of work. They're working on ways to actually how to safely open up the economy. But again, I'm going to repeat this, that as Chairman Tavares has indicated, we really need to open up in a safe way to keep people healthy. We don't want to go back on the numbers. So thermometers, if you're a business, I would invest in a thermometer, because you most likely be taking temperatures on a daily basis as people come in. Masks, gloves, obvious, cleaning supplies, etc. So it's imperative that you start doing this, start researching and getting these supplies sooner than later. These will be the new norm. We should get some indication by middle to late next week of what some of the guidances will look like. But by the 18th, which is 12 days from today, we should be seeing the guidance from the advisory board through the governor on how we're going to be able to open. So, and with that, one last thing I do want to bring up is that the April tax revenues in Massachusetts dropped by $2.3 billion. Usually April is a good indication, is a good tax month revenue for the Commonwealth. But a good majority of that number went down this compared to 2019. A good majority of that is because the tax deadline was pushed back to July 15th. So we do feel like as a Commonwealth, we'll be able to get through this fiscal year through June 30th. But it's next fiscal year that's going to be the real challenge. We're also looking at borrowing from the federal government to get through this fiscal year as well. So, and I think it's also worth noting too, as Dr. Wilson was talking, it reminded me that Massachusetts is one of 3 of the worst states in the country right now, behind New York and New Jersey. So although we are seeing numbers that are improving, we are not by any means out of the woods yet on this, and we do need to continue to be vigilant on this. And one last thing, something historic is actually happening in the House of Representatives today that I'll be partaking in. Is actually we're going to be doing a virtual formal session. I may have to jump off this call a little bit early to do that. We're going to be in formal session at 1 o'clock, but it's going to be very historical. And one of the things we're going to be talking about is actually how do we actually do these virtual formal sessions. It's going to be an experiment, but it'll be very historical, and it may be something as a preview to the cities and towns on how they conduct their town meetings going forward. So that's the update for today, Steve.
Thank you. That is Representative Matthew Muratore, and it's interesting, Matthew, you explained that because this morning I actually spoke to a moderator in another town who contacted me looking for information regarding the virtual town meeting. And I suggested to him that certainly we should put our heads together and even ask the Mass Moderators Association once again to have a meeting to share the talent if you're able to pass that legislation that you have co-sponsored. So I would be very interested in hearing any feedback you have regarding virtual legislation.
Sure will. Sure will.
Thank you. That is Representative Matthew Muratore. He is a Plymouth State Representative. We're going to be going to questions. You can send them to plymouthinfo@pactv.org. And first, I'd like to just announce some of the people who are coming up. Tomorrow, we have Dr. Philip Triffletti, an attending physician at Beth Israel Deaconess. Stephen Coley is the executive director for the Plymouth Regional Economic Development Foundation. And looking to Friday, Plymouth Police Chief Michael Buttieri will be returning to talk about masks, and we'll also be hearing from Plymouth County Sheriff Joseph McDonald regarding what is happening this week at the Plymouth House of Correction. We're now going to go to questions, and one of the questions first to Dr. Wilson. Dr. Wilson, in this week's update from Beth Israel Deaconess in Plymouth, the hospital announced that it is experiencing an increase in COVID-19 positive and suspected positive patients requiring hospitalization. And the hospital said they're managing resources and bed availability during this current surge. Dr. Wilson, based on the numbers that you're seeing, what accounts for the current surge?
This is not surprising because there is, as I think most people know, a delay between someone being infected and eventually becoming so ill that they have to go to the hospital. And we can expect that the number of hospitalizations and protracted hospitalizations in particular will continue to rise over the next, say, week or two, even if at the same time the number of new cases has more or less stabilized or begun to decline. And so in some ways, this is the storm that follows the first exposure storm. And this is what we worry so much about, because those are the people in greatest need, at most risk of severe complications and possibly even death. And so in some ways, this is not surprising and should be anticipated.
Thank you, Dr. Wilson. He is an active professor emeritus at the University of Michigan School of Public Health, Department of Epidemiology. Next, we're going to Town Clerk Laurence Pizer. This is more of a comment, but Mr. Pizer, you may wish to further add. Sheila, who is watching today, sent us an email at 12:19 and wants to thank you for dealing with the absentee ballot issue on TV today. She says she's tried other routes to get this information out to Plymouth seniors, but with no avail. So she's thrilled you addressed the issue, so especially important to Plymouth seniors. Anything you want to add about how to get the word out going forward?
Well, we very much appreciate anybody who has contact with a lot of voters. We've already used the Pine Hills intranet to tell all of the people in the Pine Hills to vote by mail. Use the addresses that we have. Feel free to call the office. We want to help you, help us, and to help keep our poll workers safe.
Thank you. That's Town Clerk Laurence Pizer answering in response to a compliment from a viewer. The next question, we're going to go to Heather Cozby, and possibly followed by Michael Jackman. But Heather, the question is, if people have been laid off and they're collecting unemployment and their employer is able to bring them back but not at the same level so that their take-home pay would be less, can they still collect partial unemployment? This, I believe, was a question we got yesterday as well, but any thoughts on that?
So the way that works is that you have to report what you earned. and it will calculate how much you might still qualify for, because the unemployment, the state unemployment, is based on like a percent of your earnings. So if you earn over that percent, I'm sorry, I don't have the percent. If you earn too much, then you would not qualify for benefits that week. I do not know how that affects the federal unemployment. But so you want to keep reporting each week, because you could have something where they might want you back for a week, and you need to report that information correctly, and you might not qualify for benefits that week, but then the following week you might not have work, and you'll need to report that, and then you qualify for benefits again. So it's possible that people could go in and out of qualifying for benefits, but your claim is to remain open while this is going on.
Thank you. And Michael Jackman, anything further to add to what Heather has said? Michael?
No, I think what Heather said is accurate and absolutely correct. One of the issues about the federal unemployment, the CARES Act did add $600 add-end onto each unemployment claim. And that's a weekly add-end, I'm pretty sure. So one of the issues I think some employers are finding is that if they have the payroll, the PPP loan, and they need to keep their payrolls consistent over the 8 weeks to make that loan be forgivable. They're having issues with folks who are getting that extra $600 and might be making more or close to what they're making on unemployment that they would be from their employer. But as Heather has noted in the past, you have to be certified by the state to be eligible each week for unemployment. And if you've been offered work and turned it down, you cannot be certified. That's my understanding. I'm not a lawyer, but that's my understanding of the state unemployment law. So that's something that people should be thinking about when they are collecting that unemployment, that they need to certify every week.
If we could stay with Michael Jackman, question on the CARES Act. Chester writes, I'm retired, I'm collecting Social Security, I work part-time seasonal job for extra income. My employer does not contribute to unemployment insurance. It's most likely that the seasonal job will not open this year. Can I apply under the CARES Act?
So apply for the CARES Act in terms of unemployment. If they are seeking unemployment, I don't know why their employer wouldn't be paying into the unemployment trust fund. That would be an issue, but certainly they can give our office a call, and between our office and the state elected officials' offices, we can try to figure that out.
Yes, thank you. And the next question, I'm going to go to Representative Matthew Muratore. And Matt, if you can answer, each week you've been giving statistics, and I know in the past you've given statistics regarding mortality, but the Judy viewer writes, I've not seen statistics for COVID-19 mortality in the town of Plymouth. Have there been mortalities? And if so, could you post these as well as the other statistics?
Yeah, thank you for that. Sorry, Judy, I usually do that. Actually, in the town of Plymouth, the amount of cases was 273. And with regard to deaths, there are 9 deaths in the town of Plymouth at this point. Plymouth County, it's 5,736 cases and deaths of 341.
Thank you. And if we can now go around to our panel, we're going to ask for each of them to give us a closing statement. We're going to begin today with Representative Matthew Muratore. Matt.
Yeah, thanks, Steve. And I apologize for rushing off. We're going to be starting session shortly, but I appreciate that. First of all, again, thank you to all the panelists. You've all done fantastic work during this whole pandemic, and we really appreciate the input and everything you're doing. And Larry, thank you for what you're doing for the town and for the special election, for the other elections. It's amazing work what you folks are doing. Just a reminder that, again, it's Mother's Day. Flower shops are open. A little birdie is telling me golf courses may open up a little bit next week, so stay tuned for that. And looking at the forecast for the next 7 days or so, the weather's not going to be all that great. It's going to be okay. So hopefully we can still maintain social distancing or physical distancing and keep wearing those masks. Happy Nurses Day to those nurses out there, and thank you to all those essential workers who are taking care of our physical health and those taking care of our economic health. And like I say every day, stay informed. Contact, go to mass.gov/COVID-19. Ask questions by calling 211. Get alerts by texting COVID-MA to 888-777, or in Spanish, COVID-MA ESP to 888-777. Or if you have health questions, go to bowie.com/mass. Stay calm, and again, just stay home and enjoy the time with your family that you're having. We will get through this. We're getting there, but we're not there yet. And the worst thing we can do is actually open up too early, not wear face mask, and ignore the governor's orders, and we'll be right back in this again. So continue doing what you're doing. We're doing a great job. Again, you're staying home, you're saving lives. And again, the more we come together by staying apart, the faster we will get back to the people we love and the things we love to do. But thanks again, Steve, to PAC TV, and to all the panelists today.
Thank you, Plymouth State Representative Matthew Muratore. We're going to go to Dr. Mark Wilson. Dr. Wilson, last week was first day of masks in Plymouth, and you're back today, the first day of masks statewide. And we hear in some places that people are not following orders. What do you want people to remember today from our health component?
As Matt just said, we're in the middle of an unprecedented pandemic, and it's a huge disruption. We all know that. In fact, the model suggests it's actually going to perhaps last even longer in our region than originally expected. And so we really need to think of the other people around us. Even if you don't feel that you're vulnerable, even if you don't believe that you're going to get it, you can be asymptomatically infectious to others. The reason to wear a mask is for your friends, is for your family, is for somebody who you don't even know walking down the street, who you walk by. And so this is the reason to wear a mask. And so long as you cannot maintain a wide distance from others, you really must now wear a mask. So the law says that. But in addition to that, this is simply part of being human. Respect your fellow humans.
Thank you, Dr. Mark Wilson. He is a Plymouth epidemiologist. And Mark, we thank you for putting a lot of this information in terms that are understandable for all of us who are not in schools of public health and departments of epidemiology. Laurence Pizer, our town clerk, what is the takeaway from today's program?
First of all, if we're successful in getting the election postponed and you voted by mail, your votes will count. They will be counted when the election occurs, whenever that is. And finally, I've been clerk for almost 28 years. I've never voted by mail. This time, I'm going to. Please do. We encourage you to vote, and we encourage you to vote by mail.
Thank you, Laurence Pizer, town clerk. Thank you for joining us. Representative Matthew Muratore just indicated a correction on the number of Plymouth positive cases. We have 290 in Plymouth. We'll now go into Michael Jackman, on staff, Congressman Bill Keating. Mike, your closing thoughts.
Thanks, Steve. Yeah, I just want to use this opportunity to mention once again the census, the decennial census. Every 10 years we do it. It is ongoing as we speak. It's not going to look like any other census the country's ever done. The response rate for Plymouth is slightly ahead of Massachusetts, which is great, but it could be better. It's about 60%. We want to get that as high as we can before folks have to start knocking on doors and asking questions, because that's going to obviously be a challenge during this time. So you can go online and find out more about the census, my2020census.gov, or you can give a call to 844-330-2020. And on that website, my2020census.gov, it has a list of phone numbers for folks who speak languages other than English that they can use to get the information on how they can fill out the census online or over the phone. So please take a minute if you haven't done so already to fill out the card if you got it. Go online if you got a special ID number in the postcard, or give a call or check out that website, find out how you can file. Thank you, Steve.
Thank you, Michael Jackman. He's on staff at the Congressman Bill Keating's office. Heather Cozby, Plymouth CPA, your thoughts?
Thank you. One last fun fact about the PPP loan forgiveness. As of today, there is not one issued guidance, guideline, form, nothing on how this is going to happen. SBA has indicated that will be on their website by the middle of May. So just so you know, if you don't know how it's happening, nobody else does either. So, hopefully by next week, I'll have that information. I wanted to just give a little shout out to my boys, Cosmo and Brody, who are watching this at home. Hello, I'll see you shortly. And lastly, well, not lastly, but I do want to give an early Mother's Day to my mom, Bonnie, out in Washington, and say hi to my dad. And remind everybody to watch the Coachella and donate this Saturday, because it is a wonderful event. We're so happy to be a part of it. Plymouth, to me, is hit unusually hard because of how much investment business have made getting ready for our 40th anniversary. So I have in my heart, I really just hope that everybody turns out and supports the local businesses and donates to the Plymouth One Fund. And, thank you as always to all the responders, and to see everybody here. So good. Take care.
Thank you, Heather Cozby, CPA. A great segue into Executive Director Amy Naples, Plymouth Area Chamber. Amy.
Yes, thank you. And thank you, Heather, for the plug. Small businesses mean everything to me and our community. So this event is truly our hope to raise as much funds as possible. So we hope to see you all on Saturday evening at 7 p.m. for Coachella. Also, as Matt said, today is National Nurses Day, and I want to extend a huge thank you to all the warriors and scrubs for their bravery and sacrifice. And lastly, if you need help with your Mother's Day ideas, I can help. I will encourage you to support local. So get shopping, order your flowers, order a special meal for her, your wife, your mother. But you can reach out to me and I can help you with that. You can send me an email at amy@plymouthchamber.com or call me directly at 508-830-1620 and support local.
Thank you, Amy Naples, Plymouth Area Chamber of Commerce. And lest we think this program doesn't work, when I found out yesterday the flower shops were open yesterday, I left the studio and called to order flowers for Mother's Day. So it does work. And now we're going to thank all of our participants. They include Dr. Mark Wilson, Laurence, Pizer, Michael Jackman, Heather Cozby, Amy Naples, as we circle back to the chair of the Plymouth Board of Selectmen, Ken Tavares. Ken.
Thank you, Steve, and to everyone on the panel today. Thank you for all of the information that you've once again provided for us. I just want to leave you with a brief thought today, and that is to stay the course. Everyone from the local level on up to the federal are trying their best to give the right directives that we need to follow. They can give them, but we are the ones that need to follow. We know right from wrong, and it doesn't take much to figure it out. So please follow what's being asked of you. It'll make this so much faster, and we won't be living with this virus forever. I also want to once again thank the town clerk, Mr. Pizer, and his group. They have made voting easy. It's the best way to do it. I haven't voted by mail since I was in the military, but I have already filed for an application. It's the way to do it this year. It will be so helpful to the clerk's office, and we all have an obligation to help Mr. Pizer along and group. Thank you, Steve.
Thank you, Kenneth Tavares, Chair of the Plymouth Board of Selectmen. And I would echo that. My wife and I both have filed requests for both the state senate election, the local election. It's easy. Please do it now. And Ken says stay the course. We'll continue to stay the course each day. And tomorrow, again, we'll be back here with Dr. Philip Triffletti, an attending physician, Beth Israel Deaconess, Representative Kathy Lenatra, who is a Plymouth State Representative. Also joining Ken, Matt, and me will be Stephen Cole, the Executive Director, Plymouth Regional Economic Development Foundation. Thank you for joining us today. I'm Steve Triffletti, Plymouth Town Moderator. Good day.